Watches from Grand Seiko are good, really good for the money. But can they actually compete with Lange Söhne, one of the best watchmakers in the world? Today, we're going to compare one of my favorite Grand Seikos, the SPGY003, with the Lange Söhne Saxonia Thin in 5 different categories: the dial, the movement, the case, the strap, and the value, and see if Grand Seiko can really play with the big boys. The first thing you see on the watch is the dial. And oh boy, the dial on this Grand Seiko is something really special. The dial is finished in silvery white and has a sunray texture that is flawless. And by flawless, I really mean it. Every indice is polished to perfection, and the hour, minute, and second hand are immaculate, and something that you rarely see on any watch. Everything on this dial is achieved by hand, and it's just crazy if you consider the price point on this watch. If we take a look on the Lange, we see a dial that streams German Bauhaus design. The dial was designed around its purpose, to tell the time with the hour and minute hand. Nothing more. Everything that Lange deems unnecessary was cut, and with good reason. The dial doesn't need to tell you anything other than the time, right? But the problem I have with the Saxonia is not the design of the dial, it's the finishing of it. Because this dial has a lot of imperfections. From dust to scratches, almost anything ugly imaginable is to be found on this dial. And that's something that I was really shocked at when I filmed this watch. With so much room for improvement on the dial of the Saxonia, you gotta ask yourself where your money has gone. The real magic starts when you turn the watch around, because this is where all your money seems to have gone. The movement is just wow. I mean, it's like seeing in HD for the first time. From the iconic glass hitter stripes on the 3/4 plate to the perlage and hand-engraved balance cogs, everything on the movement seems like art. It's like seeing a painting from Picasso himself on the back of the watch. If we look at the Grand Seiko, it's fine, or even great for the money. But it's nowhere close to the perfection of the Lange. You still have loose screws and a clean movement finish to a decent level, but the string drive movement is stale and kinda boring to look at. And that's kinda sad, because the performance of this movement is just light years ahead of the Lange. To explain the string drive technology would take another video, so here's a TLDR. The movement is quiet because it has no balance wheel, and because it has no balance wheel, it's sturdier than mechanical movements. It's accurate like a quartz movement because it has a quartz crystal, but it's not powered by a battery. Instead, it's powered by a spring that you either wind with your hand or with the rotor, just like a mechanical movement. This watch has no rotor, so it's powered only by hand winding. It's just like the Lange. The performance of the movement from the Lange is good, and something that you would expect from a renowned watchmaker. It's been regulated into 5 positions and accurate enough for a mechanical movement. The Lange has a great and reliable movement with incredible finishing, while the Grand Seiko brings unique and one-of-a-kind technology combined with good finishing that you would expect at this price range. While the SPGY003 was made out of stainless steel, the Saxonia Thin was formed from white gold, and that's one of the main reasons for the difference in price. But regardless of the price, the case on both watches are executed really well. On the Grand Seiko, the majority of the case is mirror polished by the famous Zerratze polish. Every polished area reflects everything like a mirror, and this creates this one-of-a-kind light play that is only seen on Grand Seiko watches. Combined with the mirror polished hands and indices, the entire watch shines like a diamond. The Lange, on the other hand, is really well made, and the areas of polish and satin finish gives this watch its down-to-earth feeling. It's not blinding your eyesight like the Grand Seiko, but it still has some light play, and rotating your wrist with it still something that I really enjoy. If this Grand Seiko was made out of precious metals, the price of the Lange would seem really good, because Grand Seiko has almost the same model made out of yellow gold, and it costs 27,000 euros. So the Lange is kind of a steal. Don't you think so? Judging the leather straps of watches is really hard, because even though they might look the same, the feeling on the wrist is completely different. While the Grand Seiko is really soft and comfortable on the wrist, it feels cheap in comparison to the thick and durable strap on the Lange. The Grand Seiko comes with a folding clasp, which is really good for the longevity of your strap, but it creates this thick area under your wrist, which some people might not like. The Lange, on the other hand, has a pin buckle, which is kinda sad to see at this price range, because having a folding clasp is something that you would expect at this price range. The only upside about it is that it's made out of white gold. Both straps complement the watches they're on really well, and either one of them is really good if we were to compare it to the other brands. You might have to change the strap on the Lange more often, because a pin buckle is not that good for the longevity of the strap. But that's just a minor inconvenience in my opinion, because these watches would fit to any kind of strap. Value for money is difficult to discuss because people value different things on their watches, and that's why it's so hard to argue for one or the other. People that are not that into watches just care about the name of the brand, and that's where Grand Seiko is having a tough time. I mean, paying 8,300 euro for a Grand Seiko is something that not a lot of people are willing to do because they associate Grand Seiko with Seiko, and 8,000 euro for a Seiko is crazy for these people. 17,000 euro for a Lange Söhne sounds like a steal in comparison. You get a watch from one of the best watchmakers in the world. But if we were to compare these watches without looking at the brand name, it's really difficult to judge if one is worth it or not. Both watches offer a lot for the money. One of them spends everything on the movement finishing and the other on the dial. So you have to decide what matters to you. When it comes to the availability of the watches, the Saxonia Thin is readily available for purchase, sometimes even with a discount. The Grand Seiko SBGY003 is a limited edition of 700 pieces and currently trading far over the retail price. But Grand Seiko has released a new unlimited edition of it, the SBGY007. Everything other than the dial is the same. And this blue snowflake-like dial is something that some of you might prefer. So now you should have an idea on which watch you prefer. It's really up to the person who purchases any of these watches and what they value the most. For my part, Grand Seiko is and will most likely stay one of my favorite brands. Even with their faults, I just cannot overlook their artistic perfection when I wear them on my wrist. I like Lange Söhne and I strive to own one day. But the one that I want is not this one. I'm more into complications and a dial that has something going on. Even though the movement on the Lange is a piece of art, I don't think I will wear the rear side of my watch. If you were to choose between them, which one would you take?